Among these books is my mom's book, the Lemont book. You probably got that one.
Of course. Yeah, it's
Um,
right there.
Definitely, definitely.
Feel like,
this is a copy, and I might have to bring it to you.
oh my God. That's
Well,
really
this
cool.
is every one of
Oh,
the Lemont Metropolitan columns my mom did.
whoa.
So it's just the Met, and she did it for the Lemonter for years before that. But I
Oh
don't
wow,
know.
that is really
There's
amazing.
like 200 and some columns in here.
That's crazy.
That's awesome.
If it's possible, we could totally use that in the exhibit if that's okay with you.
Yeah, I know. I'm trying to decide, like, copying it will take like a month, but I
That
would like to
I forget you're on the list.
provide it. Yeah, I'd like to give you the originals, but I'd like to keep a copy.
I mean, it sounds like it's just an excuse for a road trip. Let's go.
Well, of course, I'm planning to be there in June.
No, we
Uh,
know that.
oh, you want to come to Seattle? Okay,
Yeah,
sure.
I mean, why not?
We
Yeah,
will have
well,
to think of a strategy of at least including part of that material
Yeah, for sure.
before June. Maybe we'll think of a strategy. Maybe we'll ask you to kind of pick and choose some of your favorite
Yeah.
parts of that, and then we can scan it and digitize it, when we see you in person. We can get it done then. The other option is, mailing it with insurance, mailing it like UPS with some kind of extra insurance, or like signature upon delivery, or whatever, whatever kind of option. That's the other option, so that we can include more of it before the exhibit. So I'll let you think about that.
I
But we'd
will think
love
about
to
that.
include that.
It might make some sense to have it digitized here. I don't know what it would cost, but I could find out.
Yeah,
Um,
for sure.
yeah, I mean, I could do it on my own computer, but it would take about a week.
Right. Yeah. I mean, I definitely understand. I mean, I wouldn't want to burden you with that. No one, unless you're actually doing archival work, like, in your daily life, it's very time
No, no, I
so
don't do that.
unless you want to become an archivist for a week.
You can become like an honorary archivist with us.
No, I mean, it's a wonderful thing. When I was a kid growing up in Lemont, the library was behind the police station,
Yep.
and it was about the size of my living room.
Really.
Yeah, but I used to take books out every week. It was a big thing.
What's the one thing that you kind of remember from like the library at that location specifically?
Well, I remember that it smelled old and musty. Some of the buildings in Lemont had this funny old musty smell. Blush and Welter Hardware, which is that old building. We would go in there, and the wooden floors were creaky, and the place smelled musty, and it looked like nothing had been changed in like 150 years. It was pretty cool. And a lot of the old buildings in Lemont, before they were rehabbed, had that same kind of look and feel.
I
You
bet.
know, get this connection directly to history. I'm sure that had something to do with my mom's, focus. She grew up in Downers Grove, not really in Downers, actually between Downers and Lemont, out on a farm.
Really.
But yeah, but I think that coming to Lemont, she has such a sense of history anyway, just was always interested. And when you come to Lemont, I felt like it was still 100 years back in the past.
Yeah. Dude, that's like an incredible gift that she had, like to make people like really care about history. We've heard it from your other siblings that like she made them want to like write down things and like document their lives. And like that's something special for sure. So like tell me something special, like a favorite memory about your mom and her work in Lemont.
Well, there's 100 of those. I
Uh,
mean, thousands probably. You know, not exactly a history thing, but it sort of tells who she was. On the very first Earth Day, you know where the Sitco refinery is?
I think so, yeah.
Yeah, over, go down 127, down to 135th Street and,
Yeah, definitely.
Romeo Road if you're going back over to Romeoville. Well, that used to be this gorgeous wetland, beautiful wetland full of birds and wildlife. And when Citco, it actually was Union Oil, proposed to build a refinery there, It was the first Earth Day, and my mom organized a giant demonstration. There probably 30 or 40 people showed up
Wow.
protesting the destruction of the wetland.
Yeah.
And in Lemont in those days, that was about as wackadoodle as you could be. It's like, are you kidding me? There's going to be like 150 jobs here, and they're going to all be union jobs. I mean, but nobody got mad. Everybody's like, well, she's got a point. It's too bad. And she had me, I was like 12 years old or something, wearing an ecology symbol, which I didn't know what it was. She had us all decked out, in the demonstration,
Yeah.
and it was just the kind of thing that she was always doing. She was such an iconoclast, like when they wanted to wreck all those buildings. And as soon as she and Sylvia Savage heard that they were going to tear down the old school, old central school, and she's like, no, they're not. That's not happening. And they called all the ladies and they all got together and they started just going through the system to get them all nominated. They said they worked on the school first, but then they realized that all the other buildings were at risk too. So they started getting the whole district nominated. And, my mom figured out how you do it. And she and Sylvia and, who else was Barb Bushman? I think Barb's still around too. I hope you're talking to her. Um, and Kim will remember all this stuff. Have you talked to Kim Savage yet?
No.
So
Uh,
you know who she is, right?
No, but we haven't talked to either one yet. But if you have, names and phone numbers or names and emails, we would welcome, any kind of like contacts or whatever in an email or, afterwards. That would be great.
yeah.
Well, Barb Bushman is still involved in the Historical Society, I believe.
Uh,
If you track down Kim Savage, Kim, is a little older than I am. She knows everybody, and she stayed in town, and she's not in Lemont, but she's over in Westmont or something. But she's an activist, just like her mom. They're like cut out of the same cloth, and
wow.
so it'd be really easy to, yeah, if you get a hold of Barb or particularly Kim, they'll get you connected up with a lot of my mom's old cronies who are still around.
That would
You know,
be really awesome. Yeah.
they were a gang. They were so funny. And they had all these, the city fathers terrorized because they were always trying to improve Lemont. It's like tear all this stuff down and build something modern 1970s style. You can just imagine. And they stopped them. I mean, they just at every turn they convinced people that someday it would be valuable for Lemont to be different and to preserve these really spectacular old buildings.
Yeah.
And of course, history's proved them right.
I mean, yeah, you're right. I mean, my next question is actually about that. So, like, in your own opinion, what makes like both the Lemont Public Library District and the Lemont Public Library, I mean, like, sorry, in Lemont, different or unique compared to the other like communities, like surrounding communities or like libraries?
Well, part of what my mom knew because of her sense of history was that Lemont was different and that the Illinois and Michigan canal was, hold on a second, I've got a cold, I'm coughing a little. The Illinois and Michigan canal is what built the area. Um, and she had read enough to know that at the time that canal was built, Lemont was bigger than Chicago. And she had this real sense of the history of the region, partly from growing up there, partly from she was in Chicago till she was maybe in eighth grade or freshman year of high school. And so when they came out to Downers, it was nothing. And she was very focused on the built environment and on cities. And she was looking for the history of that region. She was trying to learn about where they had moved to. And she just kind of zeroed in on Lemont because it was the oldest community. And it is in such a unique community. It's funny, I have such a warm spot in my heart for Lemont, and it's so different from all the other suburbs. I don't think except for Lockport, there's nothing like it. And Lockport and Lemont, they teamed up. Jerry Adelman, you know about him?
Yeah,
Yeah. Have you talked to Jerry?
not yet.
Oh, you got to talk to Jerry because Jerry and my mom worked together on the National Historic Preservation Corridor.
Oh my
Yeah,
God.
no corridor. Yeah, in fact, my mom was at the signing ceremony with President Reagan, 1982.
Wow. I did not know that.
Yeah. maybe it was 84, but whenever it was established, yeah, that President Reagan came to Chicago and they had a ceremony. And um, before she was a teacher, she was a nurse. And it's just a little kind of historical side tidbit, but she came back from that ceremony and talked to Reagan quite a bit. And she said to my dad, who was a physician, Ronald Reagan has Alzheimer's. She diagnosed him before anybody was talking about it.
Wow.
And the way she knew was that she said when Reagan wasn't talking, he sat with a blank look on his face and he didn't engage, which apparently is something that people with Alzheimer's, early Alzheimer's, will do.
That's
But
very great.
but anyway, she and Jerry Adelman were the driving forces behind the canal corridor.
Hmm.
And that was sort of the second phase after they got all the historic preservation work done for downtown. Then she and Jerry teamed up, and he'd been doing the same thing in Lockport. They teamed up to create the historical corridor.
Corridor. Okay.
There's a book about that. Is it in the library?
I actually probably don't know. Maybe I can check it out.
I'm looking for it. Sorry, all these books
No, that's
here.
fine. Yeah, good. I mean,
I
I need as much research.
Uh, I'll find it. I'll send it to you. I'll send you the link. But um, the book is actually worth looking at because it talks about the whole historic corridor. And the writer, Tony Hiss, is a friend of mine. I didn't know him at the time he wrote the book, but part of what's great about it is he really captures the essence of the whole region, but especially he zeroed in on Lemont. And I met him because he was writing about northern Canada, and I ran into him there. But somehow we started talking. He said, "Where are you from?" And I said, "Oh, you would never have heard of it." And I told Lemont. He goes, "Oh, I know all about it. I wrote about it."
Wow. What an interesting experience for that to happen. Like, you guys like, wow.
Can I interrupt for just a moment?
Yeah, go ahead.
My wife handed me her phone, and it says on here that the grand jury has indicted this guy, Donald Trump. He just got indicted. Sorry.
What
I'm
a
I'm pretty left of center. I've been waiting for this day for a while. I know in Lemont you can't say that stuff. Well, Lemont voted 75% in favor of Donald Trump in 2016.
I actually did not know that.
I did know that.
Oh
All
my
my Facebook
God.
friends from high school were all thrilled.
I I have no words for that actually.
Yeah, you don't have to. I know you can
Speechless
talk
on,
about
honestly on
it.
that.
You
Oh
guys
my
have to
God.
stay neutral. Anyway, so the only reason I bring that up is because the historical corridor, the historic corridor, and the quarrying and the buildings and the history, it's all tied together. And my mom absolutely figured that out and wrote about that. Most of her columns are about that. Um, and about labor history, how because the quarry workers, were organizing and trying to organize because they were so badly abused. Um, and so, in a way, if you dig into any particular place that has some history, you see echoes of everything that was happening in the larger world. It was a microcosm, and she just totally nailed that in her book and her columns and her readings. And it was a delight to just listen to her talk. And she loved to talk. And if you got her going, she'd just go on for an hour about, this and that member of Congress, or this person that grew up in the region and became rich. And, these people went to the Civil War from Oman and all died, and it was just, she kind of could make all these connections.
She sounds like a reservoir of knowledge. She seems
She,
remarkable.
she, yeah, she died at 64. I mean, it's just unbelievable because, she should have lived to be in her 90s. Her aunt and her great grandmother all made it to 100, and it was just a tragedy. But we carried on. She inspired a bunch of us. My son is majoring in history at college. I
Oh,
studied history before I became a lawyer.
me too.
Um, yeah. I mean, well, I think that's part of what gets you interested in books too, and in archiving and libraries. And this reservoir of knowledge that is out there. It needs people to continually refresh it, and she did that. You know, she always, and I think she, well, I know she changed the character of Lemont.
Yeah.
Because prior to, I remember growing up, you know, people thought of Lemont as kind of backward and small and not special. And now, to the extent people are aware of where they live, and it's not just a bedroom community, they see it as being really different and having a really different history and a proud history and an interesting background, you know, that is so different than like Glen Ellen or Elmhurst, you know, just to pick on a couple of towns I know well. Um, you know, I moved away when I was 17 to go down to University of Illinois, and then I moved west when I was 21 and moved to Alaska when I was 23. So you know, I wasn't around that long, but my parents didn't get rid of their house. My dad was in his house until just 10 years ago. And I was always back. You know, I always came back and I was always in town. And I'm drawn to Lemont because it, you know, gave me a sense of roots, you know, and of where I'm from, and it's for and being a really special place. And you know, that's what my mom did for all of us, for many people. If you go on some of the Facebook pages, you know, you see longtime Lamonters, or you know, I don't know if you've seen all those pages, but you know, there's three or
Oh
four.
yes, I'm on longtime Lamonters. I'm on there all the time. I know exactly
Yeah,
what you're talking about.
yeah, it's really interesting how I think so much of that was inspired, not just by my mom, but she was a driving force to get people to see that there was something really special about that place. Because one of my best friends is from Glen Ellen, you know, and he and I moved to Alaska together, and you know, there's no longtime Glen Ellen wait Facebook page. You know, I mean, some of these suburbs that just kind of blew up, like Naperville and all the western suburbs, you know, they don't have any of that. They don't have that sense of being different and special and being connected. And so, yeah, I think that was a great gift she gave to everybody, you know, to get people to stop and think about you know, why is that old building here and what does it mean? And, you know, why was it built? And, you know, who was there at different parts of their lives? Um, the Altgeld thing, have you run into that yet? Former governor of Illinois, John Peter Altgeld, was kind of a progressive, and he was involved in the Haymarket strikes on the good side. But the Haymarket bombing and strikes, there was labor unrest in Lemont. That's a big part of my mom's book. Um,
Right. Yeah.
Yeah.
but that was national politics that was happening right, you know, in and around Lemont. You know, in various times, it was really an important place, not just locally, but nationally.
Yeah. It really seems like that, really. I mean, there's a quaint, like there's a little like you can feel that like Lemont is unique in its setting already, but like once you talk to more of the people and like your mother has made it like again, like it makes me feel like it's very special. And I see it in the way that she sees it. So that's awesome, really.
Did you grow up in Lemont, Ayah?
No, I grew up in Oak Lawn and I still live there. So like 30 minutes away. It still has like pretty rich history, but like
Yeah.
yeah, it kind of reminds me of Lemont, but like I always compare everything to Lemont now.
Well,
It's
I get that too. And I mean, you know, I think for everybody, if you become aware of a place and you become aware of its history and you know, I mean, we have the same thing here in Seattle. I lived in Juneau, Alaska for many years as my wife's grandfather worked in the gold mines, you know, and so and I work with indigenous people who lived on the same land. Most of what I do is work with indigenous people around the world, and we've lived in the same landscape for, you know, since the beginning of time. So it's
pretty.
it's really interesting, you know, for all of us who, especially those of us who are not born in a place, to connect with it. And that's another thing that history does. You know, you can show up in Lemont and go to the historical society, pick up my mom's book, you know, look at all the buildings, you know, go to the National Historic Corridor offices, and you would realize where you are and what the meaning of all these things is.
I think it's a
I
shame.
would. Oh, sorry.
But
I
I think
was
it's
going to say, I really, totally wholeheartedly agree with all of your comments, Steve. And I also think that your mom, people living in Lemont or around the area, they know that it's special. They have the sense that there's something special about it, right? That they're drawn to it or things like that. But I think what your mom did is she helped to give people a framework for their identity. That those feelings are already there. They're somewhat intangible, but what she did was, with her research and everything else that she, that was her contribution, that people were able to give their attachment to Lemont became more tangible. Because then they understood, oh, this is the background of, where I'm living, and this is why, these buildings are here, and all of a sudden it becomes so much more tangible.
Yeah, that's really true. And yeah, I think it probably it wasn't something that she intended to do to become famous. Nobody knew about it. She used to talk all the time about how this was not about her, and she really would always push other people out to whenever there was a speech to be made or whenever there was some attention to be given. She would make sure it went to the most important politicians so they get bought in. Um, she used to quote Hubert Humphrey, who once said that you can get a lot done if you don't care who gets the credit. And when I was a kid, it used to drive me a little crazy because my mom would work for weeks to set up some big, event that would like, commemorate the establishment of the recording of a building on the National Register of Historic Buildings. And they would have the ceremony. She wouldn't even talk. She'd be in the back. She'd making sure everybody was saying what they were supposed to say. And she'd get the mayor up there and she'd get, all these politicians. And of course, they were happy to take the credit, and she never got any. And I would get so mad at her. But she'd say, "I don't care about that. I don't want the attention. This isn't about me. It's about everybody." And I so admired it. I grew up, realizing over time that she was right. I'm also super grateful that you guys are paying a little bit of attention to it. So she inspires other people. That's all she wanted. She wanted everybody else to be as enthusiastic as she was.
Yeah, she's like a bit of a local hero, really. I mean, again, like more of that, like hearing more of her philosophy of doing that, it makes her just more special. Of like, see, if I were doing that, I would have been like, I want to have all the credit. But like the fact that she's like, this is more for everyone and like for Lemont, that's the bigger person right there. Way more mature than me.
It was funny too, because a lot of times people were mad at her.
Yeah.
These developers would be mad, like, I wanted to tear that building down, goddamn busybodies got in my way. It
Yeah.
it was also interesting, that she did all this while she was teaching and raising us and taking care of our family, and she would work day and night. It was incredible how much time she put into it. She would burn the midnight oil. We'd all get done with whatever we were doing. We'd be watching TV, and she'd be in a corner writing.
Do you like did you and your siblings and your dad get really involved with all the things that she did? Like how involved were you and your family in like Lemont specifically?
Well, I don't think, unfortunately or fortunately, I had a wanderlust, and I had been to Alaska when I was very young, and I wanted to go back. And I always had it in my mind I was going to go back to Alaska. And so I didn't fully appreciate what my mom was doing, and I didn't help as much as I should have. She'd always get us, involved in what she was doing, but it was her thing, and we were supportive, but I don't think we felt like it was our thing.
Yeah,
I
that's
feel a little guilty about that now because, well, when she got sick, and you probably already heard this story from Ingrid or Karen, but um, her book wasn't finished. It was a draft. And she made me promise to finish it. And I was very busy. I just started a new job, and um, my wife stepped up and said, "We can do this." And the two of us worked on the book for 4 months because it was in pretty rough shape because she'd been kind of declining while she was trying to pull the book together. But we got it in shape and wrote it in her voice. And, that was the big contribution we made, was to get that done. But she gave me a bunch of materials and said I was going to work on a second book. And it's been bothering me ever since that I didn't finish that book because there were just some rough notes, but I knew what she wanted to write about because there was some stuff that she discovered that was more recent that she didn't feel like she could write about because it involved living people.
Yeah.
But there were some good stories and kind of scandals or like juicy stuff from the 50s and 60s that would have been in the second book. I think it just
Oh my gosh.
Oh my God, that sounds awesome.
oh, I know. I kicked myself a little bit that I didn't carry it on for, uh, but I didn't have enough of the knowledge probably to do it very easily. So I hope
Well,
somebody takes advantage of this archive and runs with it.
Let's hope.
yeah, there's always, if it's, because I know that formal writing is often very time consuming with editing and things like that, but the part two could be an oral history, of whatever you remember from that second book that was never published. But that way it could be recorded. You wouldn't have to worry about editing and proofreading and things like that. It could be a series of talks, recorded talks, and you could just be on video, on camera, and just record whatever it is that you remember. And literally, you're talking about, you don't know if you have the knowledge, or the full picture. But the thing is, if that isn't captured, then actually all of that might be lost, because see, we don't have access to that information. And definitely, people who come behind us, or researchers in the future, won't know either. So even oral history interviews are better than because maybe your mom wanted that information out there somewhere.
Well, I know she was intrigued. There was, like in the 50s, there was some big scandal in Lemont National Bank and somebody absconded with a bunch of money. And, it never got really written down anywhere. There were a few newspaper articles that she clipped and she asked a few people about it. So she had stuff like that. I don't know, it would be fun to write some of the stuff that happened. She fought the establishment or the building of that big highway bridge. The bridge from I-5, I-55. She fought like
Right. Mhm.
to stop that because she said it's going to ruin the character of Lemont. And she lost and she was mad about it. She was mad about 355 too. Um, but you can't stop the changes. And I think as those things happened, I think she just realized that, all you can do is just record it. All you can do is just archive it and capture it because even a really, effective activist can't always stop a highway. Of course, this is what I do for a living. You probably don't know what I do, but I'm an environmental lawyer and I work on human rights and indigenous rights and, this stuff.
That's interesting. What countries do you do your work in?
Well, Australia, Canada, previously Chile, but no, mostly just have worked in North America. I still work with a lot of Alaska Natives, but
That's
we're always
great.
trying to stop big projects. So, I used to when my mom and dad were trying to stop the expansion of 355. Um, it was kind of funny because they would call me up for advice, and I would think, well, I could drop what I'm doing and go fight that, but I'm a little busy here with stuff happening in the national forest in Alaska. So, but
So
she
you're
did keep
you're an
this.
activist in your own right as well. I mean, you're a
Yeah, no
professional,
doubt, and I
but
absolutely owe that to
you're
my
carrying
mom.
it on.
Yeah, and I owe that to my mom and Sylvia for sure. And I say both of them because they would goad each other. They would kind of whip each other into some action particularly those two, and Barb and a few others, Bernice Johnson. They were all the kind of people who would hear something was going to be done and they'd say, "I don't think so. We'll see about that." And that empowerment at the community level has turned out to be really important everywhere I've gone, everywhere I've learned about. It's the defenders of the community. It's usually the mothers, the grandmothers. That's a global thing. It's definitely a thing in indigenous communities, but it's true in Lemont too. If you don't have the grannies on your side, you got a problem. And that was part of the strength too, of just those older mothers and women who'd been around a long time and who had wisdom, and would kind of be the deciders behind the scenes. They would say, "This is a bad idea. We're not doing this. Do it this way." And that was another thing that she showed me at a young age, and I really learned to pay attention to that. Not just what the loud guys are up there saying, but see what the moms are saying behind them.
Wow. That's wow. That's pretty cool though. Like I feel like, yeah, that makes more sense, that everyone bands together just to say what they believe in. And like it might seem trivial and like maybe small in scale, but like that's I mean that's awesome.
Yeah, well, it was also part of her legacy to, teach people that if you don't like a government decision, it's your right and it's your responsibility as a citizen to get involved. And she was super patriotic and really took full advantage of that. And she was pro-union and pro-human rights. And I mean, all for her was all of a package, right? It was all about local empowerment.
Yeah, it sounds like it. For sure.
And fighting for underdogs. She loved nothing more than fighting as the underdog. That really made her happy because nobody likes the way that, and especially in our world today, how the rich and powerful are abusing everybody else. And that's the kind of stuff that made her crazy. This little poster back here of Joe Hill,
Yep.
uh, she gave that to me as inspiration when I was in high school. And you know who Joe Hill is, right? Yeah. Well, I didn't when I got the poster. I just thought it was cool. Like, and I sort of knew because her father had been a wobbly. He'd been in the IWW when he was a mine worker in Canada. And so she had this connection through her family as well to labor history. But that was a really big issue for her because that's how she saw the world.
Yeah.
The rich and powerful were abusing the weak, and she didn't like it.
I mean, like it makes sense. There's kind of like a personal like thing to it. That's why she was so passionate about it. It makes so much more sense now. I mean, it's cool, but like now we can understand a little bit more. That's really cool.
Yeah, if she was teaching today, she'd probably get in trouble. You
Oh,
know,
for sure.
she was teaching in Florida, they'd probably arrest her because
Oh
she
God.
would tell people, and some people had her. If you ever talked to people who had her in class, I didn't because she was very kind. She never had me for a student.
What about your other siblings?
Yeah, Karen and Ingrid both got it.
Oh
Um,
God.
yeah, it was an odd thing. When she started teaching, I think when I was in fourth grade or fifth grade, and she started at fourth grade level. So and then she picked up Karen and Ingrid as they went through, and then she moved up to high school and picked them up again. But she, I never had to quite go through that. I don't think I could have. I don't think we could have done that. But but she would call it like it is as a teacher, and I look back on it now and think we were lucky to live in an era where she could say stuff like that.
Yeah.
So it's not we're not so free right now.
The more that I see it, yeah. I mean, with everything that's going on, with like everything with like Roe v. Wade and all of that, it's just like, what's happening to the world, kind of thing. We're all just looking at each other and saying like, is this what is this really happening?
Well, another thing she taught me at a young age, and I used to be so lucky as a kid. I didn't know, right? I was a curious kid. I'd walk around behind her all day and ask her questions. She would give me these incredible lectures about history. And, you know, the changes that have happened in the last 500 years, as the Enlightenment took hold and, the Dark Ages faded back and we, got rid of monarchies, all that was about seeking more freedom and autonomy for the average person. And that was exactly the frame that she explained it in. People in France got sick of the king having everything and, let him eat cake. And they said, nah, we have a different idea.
Yep.
Come on over here, we'll cut your cake. And it was, and she made it funny like that too, like she had incredible sense of humor. She was really funny. Um, yeah, it's hard, it's hard that she's gone. We all got cheated in a way because my dad lived until last year. Well, yeah, he's been dead 2 years now.
Oh God.
Um,
Sorry.
no, I mean, he was lucky. He lived to be 92 and he didn't do anything to make that happen. It just happened. He
Yeah.
didn't take care of himself at all. Like most doctors, like he never passed up a piece of candy or cake, he was just, yeah. But my mom, she just was unlucky.
Unfortunately. I mean, yeah.
Well,
Well,
it's a little bit ironic. Her mother died of ovarian cancer, and she died of ovarian cancer, and um, they grew up my grandparents had an orchard,
really?
and that, yeah, it was really quite they used to win, like 4-H stuff and county fairs. They had beautiful fruit, but they also sprayed. And
Yeah.
my mom said she remembers riding on the back of the tractor when they were spraying the fields.
Oh God. Oh,
Yeah. So I have a feeling that that didn't help.
I'm guessing that too.
Yeah.
I mean,
Hey,
oh my God, there's a person there. Hi, Audra.
hi, Audra.
Uh,
So what
yes.
other, you're on mute though.
Oh, me?
No, Audra is.
I was gonna say.
Oh, sorry about that. Sorry I couldn't be on video earlier, but I am here.
Traffic was.
It's nice to join you on video, but I definitely was there listening in. I love a lot of the points that you've made so far, Steve. It's just been, you have such a personal insight, into your mom's kind of like motivations, her goals, her philosophy, all of those traits and characteristics that really set the background for what she actually achieved, which is immense, given the fact that she was raising young children at the same time and working, and also with her activism and everything else, and yeah, she really was a busy lady. Um, so it's really, really interesting to hear about that, from your perspective. It's just amazing. Her legacy lives on, to this day, and we hope that it will live on, indefinitely. And like I mentioned before, we do have that collection of books, that they call, the Sonia Kallick collection at the library. And one of the staff had actually been, the initiator behind this. He says, I'd really like to be able to highlight this collection. Of course, we already knew about your mom through her book, because in the basement of the library, we have many, many copies. And it's actually one of the first books that I always let the interns borrow when they come on. In the basement, I let them look it over, and I say, okay, here's how you can familiarize yourself with the history of the region and things like that. So we already knew how important she was, to the history of the community. But when one of the library staff, his name is Justin, he came to us and he's like, I'd love to be able to highlight this collection. It's really important. The work that she did here is very important. So we agreed, of course. And then our thought was, well, let us reach out to her family and, start to gather up some of the you know, some of the background information on her, maybe, you know, to enhance the collection itself, because the collection itself is seems like it might have been a collection of books that she had used for her research
Yeah,
while she was alive. So
yeah, no, I brought it over.
okay, well, so
Yeah,
you're
when she
familiar.
died, we were cleaning out and we brought it over because we
Okay.
thought that the library might want to have.
Okay.
That's really
So we still have it.
Yeah,
And it is valued, but we wanted to enhance and give a more fuller picture of her contributions to the community. So that's why we wanted to reach out to you, gather some oral histories, you know, and also if you have photographs that are digitized or, you know, digital form, or if they're just hard copy photographs, we'd be happy to scan them, digitize them, and return them to you. That would be enhancing, you know, it's always nice to have different elements to a collection, of visual element, maybe an audio element, which we're doing right now. And of course, her columns, when you mentioned that's really great stuff too. So we'll have to, you know, talk about that a little bit more afterwards, but those are the ways that we wanted to be able to honor her life's work in giving a more round picture of her life and her contributions. So that's kind of the background to doing what we're doing. And you know, just to let you know that we're on the same page with you, that you know, we are amazed as well. You know, the better we get to know her, the more round and fuller picture that we get. I feel like, you know, we feel more and more strongly about this desire to really honor her life and her work. So thank you for the opportunity, you know, to giving us your time, and so that we can talk with you about you know, about your life growing up, and about your mom as well. Because like you said, she was someone who was behind the scenes. So I guess it's up to us to do the rest of the work. She didn't want
yep,
that spotlight on her all
yeah,
the time
yep.
when when she was doing her work, but the time needs to happen at some point. So hopefully we can help in some small way in honoring her work by doing this. Um, I guess maybe just one more thing that I can think of. Your mom was a teacher, an educator. Obviously, she was, you know, passionate about education and reading and things like that. Um, any particular memories about library staff that she had interacted with, or anything to do with the library in its early phases? Anything that you can remember? What were her opinions about the library? How did she think that the library was important to the community? Any thoughts like that that you remember? Anything?
Well, yeah, like I said in the beginning of the conversation, when I was just a little kid, probably right after I learned to read, she would troop us all down to the old Lemont Library down, you know, in the city hall, which was kind of behind the police station. And we would check out books and we would read them, and then we'd come back on the next Saturday and give them back and get more books. And um, she was so supportive of the library. She used to chuckle about how small it was because it was really little, you know, literally would have fit my living room. But she was always a supporter. She always told us that we needed to use libraries. You know, we had a lot of books at home, but even then, there were always more books in the library than you could ever have for yourself. She saw it as a resource, not just for us, but the community. And she used to tell her students, you know, go look it up. Go down to the library and look it up. It seems funny now, right? Because you can just pick up your phone. But there are things that were in the libraries in those days that you couldn't find anywhere else, and that's what she collected. She was always looking for that stuff, and it was totally natural that we would return those books to the library because that was her happy place. You know, she used to love to sit grab a book off the shelf or take a book out and read it for hours. And, it was about educating herself, but also everybody else in the community being educated. So yeah, she's a true believer in libraries, true supporter. I know when the new library was being built, she was just thrilled about it. Um, I don't remember because I was, at that point I was living far away. I don't remember that many specifics. I think Ingrid and Karen would know more, so you should ask them because they lived close by and they were there more often. I just want to leave one other completely unrelated thing, but it was actually really important. If you look at her book about Lemont, you notice she starts out not with the canal, but with the Native Americans.
Yeah.
And there's an extensive chapter there, and she had learned a ton about it. And so when I was about 17 years old, she handed me a copy of Marquette and Joliet's journals from traveling as voyagers through the region. And she says, read this. Every time she said, read this, I would read it because it was always worth it. And it opened my eyes to what the place was like before we showed up and who lived there and how they lived and what the magnificence of the region ecologically. And then she reminded me that, the place that we grew up in, down on 135th Street had been an Indian village. And there were pottery shards in the dirt around the house, and I remember when I was like 6 years old going to her and go, hey, what's this? And she said, oh, that was from the Indians who lived here before. From the very beginning of my life, I was aware that that landscape was theirs, that was their homeland. And then she was real clear about, we chased them out. We took that, we stole that land. And it has had a big effect on my life because that's what I do now. I'm out kind of ahead of that curve working with indigenous people in the frontiers, helping them keep their land and keep their traditions and their cultures. So that was just another unusual thing about my mom. She was aware of that stuff way before anybody was woke, and she was aware of it because of history. I mean, she said, look, we didn't invent all this stuff. There's a reason why there's arrowheads all over these fields. There were people here, there were civilizations here before we were here. I just thought I'd leave it with that because
That's such an important point.
Yeah, for sure.
So I'll get you in touch with Kim. If you can't track her down, I'll make sure that I send it. I'll see if I can scan the columns. The date is June 3rd, is that right?
It is.
I'm gonna come back and I'll try to get some digital photos and send them to you.
That would be great. Thank you so much.
Anything else?
I mean, I think you have answered a lot of these questions like directly, and like you gave a lot of information. So I'm okay with it. I'm grateful.
Sure. And if you have further questions or you can just email me. And sometimes a little slow because I'm traveling. I still gonna end up in really remote areas with no cell coverage, but yeah.
No problem. Let's create a link for, or resend Steve the link to the folder in the Google Drive where
Yes,
he
of
can
course.
upload content remotely.
Okay.
That's probably going to be the easiest way to share content between each other. That way we're not limited to, file size and things like that.
Yep.
And then is Ingrid or Karen able to join us on the 3rd, or will you be coming with your wife? I'm just curious. Obviously, we don't need to know, yet, but I'm just curious for myself because I'm excited to meet all of you.
Yeah, I hope I can get Marilyn to come. Ingrid is in Pennsylvania, but I'm pretty sure she's going to come back for that. And I know Karen would sit, so minimum Karen will be there and I'll be there. But I think it's a pretty good chance of Ingrid too. So
okay,
Sounds good to me.
yeah,
okay, well, that's exciting.
Have you
Wonderful.
interviewed Ingrid and Karen yet?
We have before you. Technically, you're
okay.
the last sibling, yeah. But we can still we're still in contact with them, so we could always ask.
Yeah, no, the only reason I bring that up is because they were so close to my mom in some ways and spent so much more time as adults. And they just revere her. We all do, but I think there's something really special about the relationship that they had with her. So
yeah. it was very evident when we were talking to Karen last week, and she really seemed like she had like a special connection with your mom, just like you, and I'm guessing definitely with Ingrid too.
Yeah. Okay, well, thank you
Definitely,
very much,
definitely.
and thank you so much for
Sure.
doing all this work. You know,
No
it
problem, no
can't
problem.
even tell you how grateful we are.
Let us know if you need any assistance with figuring out with the columns, if you need to, if we need to make a game plan of how to get some of them to us beforehand, or just reach out. We're happy to, help you coordinate anything. So we'd love to be able to include that stuff too.
Yeah, I've got to figure out some way to get
Okay.
it. Okay,
Okay. Bye, thank
thanks.
you so much.
Thank you so much.
Okay, bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye.